It was 6:47 on a Friday evening when my phone buzzed. I was finishing up paperwork in my home office. Nothing exciting, just reports that most people would fall asleep looking at. The text was from my sister Amanda. Grabbed your old device for my date tonight. Looks cool. Thanks. There was even a smiley face at the end, like she'd just borrowed a pair of earrings and wanted me to know she looked cute. At first I thought maybe she was joking. She liked to poke fun at me for being too serious about work. But the second I read it again, my stomach dropped. Amanda wasn't joking. She had been in my apartment, gone through my things, and walked out with what she thought was some piece of cheap gear. The only problem, nothing in my secured case was cheap. I went straight to my cabinet, entered the code, and sure enough, the space where the device had been was empty. Not just any device either. It was a classified navigation module, small enough to fit in your hand, worth about $2 million on the books, and assigned to me for temporary custody because of a delay in the official transfer. Military logistics can be slow, and sometimes when there's paperwork backlog, items are stored under personal officer responsibility. It's not glamorous, but that's how it works. My job was to keep it safe until Monday when it would move back into official storage. So, here I was staring at the empty spot where a multi-million-dollar asset had been less than an hour ago, and my sister was parading it around like some flashy gadget for her date. I didn't text back in all caps. Didn't call screaming, didn't run out the door. I just typed, "Enjoy." That was all she got from me. Because if she thought it was a toy, fine. She could think that. What I needed to do was handle this by the book. And by the book in my world doesn't mean a family argument at the dinner table. It means picking up the phone and reporting a theft of government property. I dialed the number directly to Major Thomas Walker, head of security for the Defense Logistics Directorate at Fort Hamilton. He answered like he always did. Sharp, efficient, no small talk. "Walker, it's Captain Grant," I said. My voice was calm, but inside I felt the kind of heat you get when someone crosses a line you didn't even think needed to be explained. "Report theft of classified unit number 77. Asset currently out of custody." There was a pause. The sound of typing in the background. "Unit 77, the guidance module. That's the one. It's gone. Details. Removed from personal storage within the last hour. Taken by civilian relative. Currently unaware of value. Estimated location. Midtown Manhattan. She mentioned using it for A-date." Another pause. Shorter this time. "Copy. Initiating theft protocol. You want CD involved? Yes. Treat it like any other theft of a $2 million device. Civilian status doesn't change the report. Understood. I'll notify NYPD and have units dispatched to likely locations. Do you have confirmation where she went?" I forwarded Amanda's earlier message to him. She said dinner downtown. Knowing her, it's somewhere she can show off. Walker didn't laugh. He never laughed. "We'll find her. I'll call you with updates." The call ended and I sat there with the quiet hum of my office around me. If you're wondering why I didn't just run out and stop her myself, let me explain something. When a civilian takes a $2 million military asset, it's not a family errand anymore. If I had confronted her personally, it would have looked like a cover-up, like I was trying to sweep something under the rug. That's not just bad judgment, it's a career-ending move. In the military, you don't bend protocol for family. You follow the chain of command. My sister never understood that. To her, my career was just me pushing paper or guarding dusty boxes. She'd never asked about what I really did. Never cared how I lived in a decent apartment on a captain's salary. Never noticed the clearances or the long hours. She thought she knew everything because she saw the outside and the outside looked boring. The truth was, she just walked out of my place carrying something that foreign governments would love to get their hands on. Something that could never be replaced if it slipped away. And she did it like she was borrowing a phone charger. The funny part, this wasn't even the first time she'd walked off with my things, clothes, makeup, accessories. She always had an excuse. It looked better on me, or you weren't using it anyway. She treated my life like a discount store, and I'd let it family drama and years of hidden resentment slide too many times. But now it was going to be her reality check. I glanced at my phone again. Another text had come in while I was talking to Walker. "Don't worry, I'll take good care of it. Just wanted something nice for the evening. You know how guys notice the details." I nearly laughed. If only she knew the kind of guys who noticed the details of that device. Defense contractors, intelligence officers, people who wouldn't be impressed by a dinner date, but by the potential to compromise national security. Still, I didn't text back. She didn't need more from me. She needed to feel the weight of what she'd done without me softening it for her. I checked the time again. If she had a 7 hours reservation, she was probably sitting down by now, chatting, showing off, maybe even pulling the module out of her purse like it was some cool new gadget she'd scored. I could picture her grinning, waiting for her date to be impressed. Meanwhile, the city was already moving. Walker would have dispatched C agents, coordinated with NYPD units, flagged the location. That's how it works. Once the alert goes out, there's no one doing it. I sat back, crossed my arms, and let the silence stretch. Family or not, she'd crossed into my world now. And in my world, every action has paperwork. Every asset has a number, and every theft has a consequence. The quiet in my office didn't last because memories of Amanda's little habit started pouring in like an old film reel I didn't want to watch again. Growing up, she always had a way of making things hers. A sweater I bought suddenly borrowed and never returned. A bag she thought looked better on her shoulder than mine. Even our parents rolled their eyes, called it her quirky trait, like chronic theft wassa personality type. The difference between us had always been obvious. She was the one who wanted attention, whole-lived for compliments and Instagram likes. I was the one who chose a career that didn't look glamorous from the outside, but demanded discipline and brains every single day. The army wasn't flashy, but it was real. She couldn't see that. To her, I was the boring sibling, the one settling for structure while she lived free. What grated wasn't just the stealing, it was the assumption behind it. Amanda assumed my time, my work, my choices. None of it mattered as much as hers. Family dinners were her monologues about coworkers, her dates, her new shoes. Nobody asked me about ordnance protocols or supply chains, and if I ever tried to bring it up, she tuned out. That sounds complicated, she'd say. Like it was my fault for not turning military logistics into a reality show. Now she had reached her masterpiece, taking government property like it was a spare necklace. And of course, she thought it was cheap gear because in her mind, nothing I owned could possibly be important. She never asked what my clearance meant. Never asked why my phone rang at odd hours. Never noticed I had more responsibility than she could handle in a week. The resentment had been brewing long before that Friday night. Years of it layered in every dismissive comment, every borrowed thing, every time she waved off what I did. I didn't go into the army for applause, but it would have been as if my own sister had given me the courtesy of respect. Instead, she doubled down on the idea that she was the star and I was the background character in her life. Her job in PR gave her an excuse to act like she was the expert on image, as if my career was a PR problem she needed to fix by making it sound more exciting to people. The irony was she spent her life crafting illusions while I dealt with things that could actually change outcomes in the real world. My phone buzzed again, not with a text this time, but with a call from my dad. He rarely called me on Fridays, which meant Amanda had already said something. I let it ring twice before picking up. "Olivia," he said, "Amanda just told us she borrowed some kind of gadget from you. What's the big deal?" She said, "You overreacted." I kept my voice even. "Dad, it's not a gadget. It's government property." Silence, then a sigh. "Come on, it can't be that serious." $2 million reporting the theft, military protocol and family betrayal worth of serious, I said. He muttered something under his breath. She didn't know. "Don't make this into a federal case." I almost laughed. "Dad, it is a federal case." Literally, the conversation ended with him frustrated, me calm. That had been our pattern for years. Amanda did something reckless. I handled the fallout. Dad asked me to be the bigger person. Only this time there was no bigger person to be. This wasn't spilled wine on my jacket or a borrowed car she dented. This was criminal. As I hung up, I felt the old familiar weight of family dynamics pressing down again. Amanda, the golden child, charming but careless. Me, the responsible one, too serious, too rigid, expected to bend so she could float through life without consequences. That script had worked when we were kids. It had even worked through college. But it wasn't going to work here. When people say family comes first, they never explain what happens when family puts you last. Amanda's version of family first was her family cleaning up behind her. My version was not letting someone drag me down with them. I remembered one Thanksgiving where she'd borrowed my coat. She wore it to a party, spilled red wine all over it, and laughed when I asked for it back. "You can afford another one," she said, brushing me off like I was her personal closet. That was Amanda in a sentence. Assume I'd just cover for her. But the Army had changed me. It taught me that accountability isn't optional. If you break something, you own it. If you sign for an asset, it's your neck on the line. And if you screw up, there's no my bad. I'll buy you coffee to make it better. There's paperwork, investigations, consequences. Amanda never got that memo because Amanda never had to. She glided through, cushioned by people who excused her behavior as just Amanda. That's how you end up with someone thinking it's fine to borrow a classified navigation module for a date night accessory. I thought back to our grandfather who'd served in Korea. He was the one who first told me that discipline was freedom, that knowing the rules let you carry responsibility without fear. He would have been furious at Amanda, not because of the theft, but because of the disrespect. Disrespect for me, for the uniform, for the system that trusted me with something valuable. Sitting there in the half-light of my office, I realized the text wasn't just a moment of stupidity. It was the perfect snapshot of our whole relationship. She took, I protected. She laughed, I absorbed. She assumed, I carried. This time, though, she had taken the wrong thing. I leaned back in my chair, the tension in my shoulders making itself known. I wasn't angry in the screaming, throwing things way. I was angry in the kind of way that goes cold, focused. Amanda had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and the fallout wasn't mine to clean up anymore. Every family has its cracks. Ours had been papered over for years with jokes, distractions, polite dinners where nobody mentioned the imbalance. But a crack doesn't disappear because you paint over it. And Amanda had just kicked a hole straight through the wall. The irony was almost funny. She thought she'd scored some cool prop to show off at dinner. Meanwhile, what she'd really done was put herself in the center of the kind of story she loved to gossip about. Except this time she was the headline, and the cameras wouldn't be flattering. I stood, grabbed a glass of water, and took a slow sip, letting the coolness settle my thoughts. This wasn't about teaching her a lesson anymore. That would imply I had control over how she processed this. No, this was about the system she mocked, finally showing her that consequences aren't negotiable. And for the first time in years, I felt a strange calm, because whether Amanda liked it or not, the world she had dismissed as boring paperwork was about to crash right into hers. My hands were still tight around the glass when I set it down and opened my laptop. The secure database wasn't something I checked often outside of duty hours, but this wasn't a normal evening. I logged in, typed the serial number from memory, and the entry flashed on the screen. Unit 77 Navigation Module. Valuation $235,000. Status assigned to Captain Olivia Grant. Temporary custody. Seeing it written in black and white only hardened my resolve. I grabbed the secure phone and arrest at the restaurant. A family revenge story goes public, dialed Walker again. He picked up on the second ring. His tone clipped like always. Walker, it's Grant. Asset confirmed. Missing. Serial number cross-keyed. Updating status to stolen 1. Got it, he said. I could hear him typing rapidly in the background. You want this flagged at the federal level right away? Yes. Full escalation. Civilian suspect named Amanda Grant. Last known location, Midtown Manhattan. Relative. I hated that question. Not because it wasn't relevant, but because I already knew what came with it. Yes, my sister. He didn't pause long enough to show judgment, but I knew he was filing it under complications. Family teas always got messy in reports. Understood. Initiating chain. Notified. NYPD getting the alert within minutes. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the methodical efficiency of a machine I'd trusted for years. Once the system was moving, there was no stopping it. I could have begged for leniency, could have tried to make excuses, but that would have been career suicide. More importantly, it would have been a betrayal of the uniform. Walker's voice came back steady as ever. What do you want from me in terms of press coordination? If she's picked up in public, there will be eyes on this. Standard procedure. No special treatment, copy that. Expect updates. The call ended, and I stared at the phone for a moment longer than I needed to. Standard procedure, no special treatment. I'd said it myself and I meant it. But there was still a sour taste in my mouth knowing what was coming for Amanda. I checked my personal phone. 2 missed calls from Dad, 1 from Mom, and a text from Amanda herself. Seriously, you're too uptight. Relax, it's just a gadget. I'll bring it back. If she only knew. But that was the point she didn't know because she'd never asked, never cared, never once tried to understand the reality of what I did. She thought the Army was just some steady paycheck with free health care, not a world where $2 million worth of hardware could vanish on a Friday night because she wanted to impress a guy. The secure phone rang again, jolting me out of the spiral. Grant, I answered. Walker, we've confirmed her location. Restaurant in Midtown, reservation at 7. C and NYP dare rolling now. And I pictured it in my head. Amanda seated at a linen-covered table, laughing too loud, holding court while her date nodded along. The module probably sitting in her purse, maybe even on the table if she was feeling bold. She would have called it her new toy without the faintest idea of what she was holding. Walker's voice cut through my thoughts. Do you want to be present for the recovery number? Keep it clean. The less family involvement, the better. Understood. And I hung up. The knot in my stomach tightening. This wasn't a drill anymore. This was a live situation with real agencies moving into position. By now, a dispatcher was briefing officers. C was coordinating plainclothes agents, and NYPD units were probably already cruising down Fifth Avenue. Amanda's night of cocktails and bragging was about to end with a pair of handcuffs. The irony didn't escape me. She had always wanted a dramatic story to tell her friends. Some moment where she was the star in the middle of chaos. Tonight she was about to get it. Except she wouldn't be the star. She'd be the headline. I stood pacing the length of my apartment, forcing myself to breathe evenly. Reporting a theft isn't glamorous. It's not shouting into radios or storming out the door. It's paperwork, protocol, and waiting. The Army had taught me patience, and patience was all I had left tonight. Another text from Amanda buzzed through. Stop being dramatic. You really need to lighten up. I let the screen go dark without answering. If she thought I was dramatic, she hadn't seen the kind of drama that comes with flashing lights outside a restaurant. I sat back at my desk, opened the incident form, and began typing. Date, time, asset number, estimated value, circumstances of disappearance, suspect description. The words flowed with the precision of years of training. This was my shield, my record, that I had done everything confrontation at the precinct. Military truth versus family lies right. If anyone ever asked why I hadn't stopped her myself, the answer was there in black and white. I followed the chain. The minutes stretched, each one heavier than the last. I imagined the scene downtown in real time. Diners sipping wine, waiters weaving through tables, Amanda tossing her hair and showing off. Then the moment of interruption. Uniforms at the door, agents moving in, the shift in the room when everyone realized this wasn't just a couple's spat. Phones would come out, cameras rolling, social media buzzing before the check even hit the table. And Amanda, she would be confused, maybe even laughing at first, convinced it was some kind of mistake. But the second someone pulled the module from her purse and logged the serial number, reality would snap shut around her. The secure phone buzzed again. I picked it up immediately. Walker didn't waste words. Target secured. Asset recovered, civilian in custody. For a moment, I let out the breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Condition, unharmed, confused. Keep saying it's fake. That sounded exactly like Amanda. Denial, then dismissal. If she admitted it was real, she'd have to admit she was wrong. And Amanda Grant didn't do wrong, Walker continued. NYPD transporting her to the precinct now. C has the asset in secure custody. You'll be contacted for formal statements. Understood. I hung up, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling. It was done. The device was safe. The system had worked. And my sister was about to discover what consequences actually looked like. The hum of my office felt louder somehow. The silence deeper. My phone buzzed again. Another call from my father lighting up the screen. I didn't answer, not yet. There would be enough explanations to go around soon. Tonight I had done my job. Amanda was about to learn what that meant. The hum of my office hadn't even settled when my phone lit up again. This time, not with Walker's voice, but with a short text update from CD. Civilian secured.
No IP on site.
Those words carried more weight than they looked. They meant the night had shifted from family drama into public record. The kind of thing that doesn't just disappear. Meanwhile, across town, Amanda was in the middle of her performance. She'd picked one of those restaurants where the lighting is dim enough to hide the price tags, but bright enough for Instagram. She probably had her phone propped on the table, snapping pictures of appetizers and smiling at her date like she'd curated the whole evening herself. The device was either tucked in her purser, knowing her, right there on the table for effect. The moment the doors opened and the officer stepped inside, everything would have changed. Diners with forks halfway to their mouths froze. Waiters glanced at each other, sensing trouble. 2 plainclothes C agents moved in first, followed by uniformed NYPD for backup. They didn't storm in, didn't shout, didn't need to. Their presence alone rewrote the mood. Amanda's date must have thought it was some kind of routine check until they went straight for her. I could picture her eyes going wide, then narrowing, trying to charm her way out before a single word was exchanged. That was her default move. Smile first, deny later. The agent didn't smile back. He leaned down, voice low but firm. "Ma'am, we need to see the contents of your bag." She laughed, probably thinking she was being pranked. "What? You think I've got a weapon?" "It's just dinner." La. But then he unzipped her purse, pulled out the navigation module, and read the serial number aloud for his recorder. That's when the laughter would have stopped. Phones came out from nearby tables. One diner pretended to tie his shoe while angling his camera. Another didn't bother hiding it at all, holding her phone up like she was live streaming. In the age of social media, nothing dramatic stays private, and Amanda had just handed the internet a show. The agent gave a short nod, confirmed theme match, and the cuffs came out. That was the real breaking point. Watching someone laugh off a mistake is one thing. Watching them cuffed in the middle of a fine dining restaurant is another. Her date reportedly tried to intervene, stammering something about misunderstandings. But one look from the officers shut him. The weight of the law, family revenge, meets military justice down. By the time Amanda was on her feet, hands behind her back, the restaurant was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Patrons whispered, speculated, snapped photos, and filmed as she was lugged toward the door. Someone muttered, "Espionage?" Another said, "Terrorism," because in that moment, nobody knew the details. They just knew a woman in heels had been arrested over a mysterious device, and that was enough to spin rumors faster than dessert could arrive. NYPD's presence made it official. The blue uniforms walked her out. CD trailing close, the module sealed in an evidence case. Her date sat frozen, half a glass of wine in front of him. Suddenly, alone in the story Amanda had tried to script as her glamorous night. Back in my office, I watched updates scroll in on the secure channel. Asset recovered, condition intact, civilian, female, cooperative, but insistent on claiming ignorance. Media presence unavoidable. That last line told me what I already knew by morning. At least one clip would be online, and the headline would be more dramatic than the truth. The secure phone rang again. Walker's voice was sharp. Grant asset I secured. Civilian in NYPD custody. Recovery was clean but public. Expect press interest. Condition of the asset? I asked intact. No tampering. Serial logged. It's already being transported to secure storage. And her claims it's fake. Keeps asking why we're making such a scene. Standard denial. That sounded about right. Amanda never admitted she was wrong. Not about anything. Not even when evidence was staring her in the face. To her, the problem wasn't that she'd taken something dangerous. It was that everyone else was overreacting. Precinct? I asked. Midtown North. Detective Martinez is handling intake. You'll be contacted. The call ended as quickly as it began. I sat there for a moment, letting it all sink in. Their reports would say the operation was routine. By the book, uneventful. but nothing about it felt routine to me. This was my sister marched out of a restaurant in handcuffs. Her name already half a rumor in 100 strangers' conversations. I didn't need to imagine how she looked. I knew Amanda would have kept her chin up, lips pursed, eyes darting to the cameras to make sure they didn't catch her at a bad angle. She hated losing control of a room. And tonight she'd lost it completely. Meanwhile, her date was probably scrolling through his phone, already calculating how to explain to his friends that the woman he was with had been arrested for stealing from the U.S. military. If Amanda thought she was scoring points with him, the scoreboard had just crashed. The social fallout was guaranteed. Photos would circulate, and by the end of the weekend, someone would match her face to her name. She had always cared more about reputation than reality. And tonight, reputation was about to eat her alive. But what mattered to me sitting in that office wasn't her image. It was the fact that the system worked. A classified asset had been taken, identified, and recovered in under 2 hours. Protocols existed for a reason. And tonight, they'd saved me from something that could have ended my career and far worse. I picked up my pen, signed the initial incident paperwork, and closed the file. That didn't mean it was over. It never is after a recovery, but it meant the first and most critical step was done. The asset was safe and Amanda was officially in the system. My phone buzzed again. Another call from Dad lighting up the screen. I didn't answer. He'd already heard enough from Amanda's side of the story. And right now, the only side that mattered was the one in the official report. I leaned back in my chair, breathing slower now, the knot in my chest loosening just a fraction. Amanda's night was ending in a holding cell instead of a fancy dessert. The device was back where it belonged, and the line between family chaos and military order had never been clearer. The ride to the precinct wasn't long, but it felt heavier with each block. I didn't go in uniform. I knew showing up like that would only add fuel. Instead, I wore civilian clothes, pulled my hair back, and carried only what I needed. By the time I walked through the glass doors, the building had the usual Friday night rhythm, a mix of noise, paperwork, and the low hum of bad decisions, the choice, prison or military restitution program catching up to people. Detective Martinez, a man in his 40s with a face that looked like it hadn't slept in years, met me in the lobby. He shook my hand. Polite but all business. "Captain Grant, we've got your sister an interview too. She's been asking for you." His tone carried a layer of curiosity, maybe disbelief. Family cases always dragged extra drama into the room. I nodded once. "What's her condition?" "Confused, defensive, but not combative. She keeps insisting the device is fake. Claims she thought it was just junk. That fit." Amanda had probably said it with the same tone she used when she called my car boring or my apartment plain. To her, if it wasn't flashy, it didn't count. Martinez gestured toward the hallway. "Before you go in, I need to ask something. Do you want to press this as theft, or do you want to frame it as a misunderstanding?" I met his eyes. "Treat it as theft. That's what at Island." He studied me for a beat, then nodded. "Understood." He led me down the hall, past desks stacked with folders and officers hunched over keyboards. At the end was a metal door. He opened it and motioned me inside. Amanda sat at the table, still in the dress she'd chosen for her night out, but now her wrists rested on cold steel cuffs. She looked smaller somehow, not in size, but in presence, like someone had pulled the plug on the constant performance she carried around. When she saw me, her face lit up with relief like I was here to fix it all. "Olivia," she said quickly. "Thank God. Can you tell them this is a mistake?" I pulled out the chair across from her and sat down, folding my hands on the table. "What kind of mistake, Amanda?" She rolled her eyes. "They think that thing is worth millions. It's ridiculous. It's just some gadget you had lying around. I figured it was a toy or something." I tilted my head slightly. "A toy you went into my place and took without asking." Her mouth opened, then closed, and she shifted in the chair. "Well, yeah, but it's not like you were using it. And you never tell me what you do at work anyway. How was I supposed to know it mattered?" I studied her, the cuffs glinting faintly under the fluorescent light. "Amanda, what do you think I do all day?" She blinked, clearly not expecting the question. I don't know. You work in some office on base. Logistics, right? You push paper. You always make it sound boring, because you never wanted to hear more than that, I said evenly. You never asked why I leave at odd hours, why I lock certain things away, why my phone rings at 2 down in the morning. You didn't care as long as I showed up when Dad wanted everyone together for dinner. She shifted again, her confidence cracking. So what? You're telling me that thing is real? Like really real? Worth $2 million? 235,000 to be exact. I said a classified navigation module serial number 77 assigned to me, and you walked out of my apartment with it like it was a cheap accessory. Her face palled. I didn't know. No, I said sharply. You didn't ask. There's a difference. The silence stretched thick and uncomfortable. For once, Amanda didn't have a comeback ready. She looked down at her hands, then back at me with a weak smile. Okay, but you can explain that to them, right? Tell them I didn't mean it. They'll let me go once you clear it up. I leaned forward, my voice low and controlled. This isn't a family squabble. This is grand theft of government property. The courts don't care if you meant it or not. They care about the value and the chain of custody. You broke both. Her eyes widened. You're not serious. They're not really going to charge me over this. 3 years in prison, I said flatly. That's the maximum sentence for what you did. And if they wanted to be harsher, they could argue national security implications and make it worse. Mina sucks. She let out a shaky laugh like the words couldn't possibly be true. You're joking. You're trying to scare me. I didn't blink. No, Amanda. This is me being generous. If I wanted to scare you, I'd let Martinez walk in here and read you the statute word for word. Her smile vanished. For the first into the military world, harsh discipline and family conflict time, I saw real fear in her expression. Olivia, please. I'm your sister. I let that sit in the air. She'd leaned on that phrase her entire life, as if being family excused everything. But sitting across from her now, I wasn't looking at my sister. I was looking at a civilian suspect who had crossed a line that no amount of shared DNA could erase. Detective Martinez knocked once before stepping inside. Captain, I need to confirm. Are you pressing full charges? I didn't look away from Amanda as I answered. Yes. Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out. Martinez nodded, scribbled something on his clipboard, and stepped back out. The door closed, leaving just the two of us again. Amanda's voice cracked when she spoke. You'd really do that to me? I held her gaze. You did it to yourself. The silence after that was heavier than anything we'd carried before. For the first time, Amanda seemed to realize she wasn't in control of the room, the story, or the consequences. The show was over, and the audience wasn't applauding. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice steady. You wanted to impress someone tonight. Well, you did. You impressed an entire chain of law enforcement officers who now know exactly who you are and what you did. Congratulations. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. Amanda hated crying in public, even in a gray room with no audience. She swallowed hard, staring at me like I'd turned into someone she didn't recognize. Maybe I had, or maybe, for the first time in her life, she was seeing me clearly. Detective Martinez didn't waste time. He came back into the room with a folder under his arm and a tired look that suggested he'd had this conversation too many times before. He dropped the folder on the table, opened it, and slid a piece of paper across so Amanda could see. Miss Grant, he said evenly, here's where we stand. What you're looking at is grand theft of government property, specifically a classified military asset valued at over $2 million. Under U.S. Code, that's a felony. Minimum sentence if convicted is probation with fines. Maximum is 10 years in federal prison. Amanda's eyes shot up. 10 years for borrowing something. You can't be serious. Martinez tapped the paper with his pen. Dead serious. Intent doesn't erase the fact that you took something you had no authorization to touch. The law looks at value and security classification. Both are high. That makes this a big deal. She glanced at me, her expression somewhere between disbelief and betrayal. You're just going to sit there and let them talk to me like this? I folded my arms. They're not talking to you like this, Amanda. They're explaining the law. This is what it looks like when your actions hit reality. Martinez didn't soften. Miss Grant, You're lucky your sister reported this immediately and by the book. If this had gone unreported, if that asset had gone missing longer, we'd be looking at suspicion of espionage. That's not 3 years. That's decades. And for the color drained from her face, I didn't even know what it was. Doesn't matter, Martinez said bluntly. Ignorance isn't at offense. If someone steals a Ferrari and says they thought it was just an old car, it doesn't change the value of what they took. Amanda leaned back in her chair, shaking her head like she was trying to physically shake off the words. This is insane. I didn't sell it. I didn't break it. I was going to give it back. I finally spoke, my voice calm. When? After dinner? Tomorrow morning? What if you'd lost it? What if someone had stolen it from you? What if the wrong person had seen it and realized what it was? You think that doesn't matter because you were planning on returning it, but that's not how responsibility works. Martinez let her sit with that for a moment, then closed the folder. Here's the deal. You will be processed tonight. Booking, fingerprints, the whole thing. After that, the district attorney will review charges. Depending on their recommendation, this could move quickly to trial or be negotiated down. But either way, you're not walking out the front door just because you say you didn't mean it. Amanda looked at me again, eyes wet now. Olivia, please, you can stop this. Tell them I didn't mean it. You're the officer. You're the one they trust. Just make it go away. I, breaking points in a family revenge story, leaned forward, keeping my voice steady but firm. I don't make things go away. That's the point. I follow the rules that keep people safe. And you broke them. Do you understand what that device is used for? That module can guide a drone across hostile territory with precision down-to-a meter. It's not a party trick. It's not jewelry. It's technology that people would kill to get their hands on. And you left it sitting in a restaurant. She blinked rapidly, trying to hold back tears, but the words landed. For once, she wasn't arguing. Martinez stood, gathering his folder. Well, proceed with intake. Captain, you'll need to provide a full statement for the record. We'll be in touch once the DA decides on charges. He gave me a look that said more than his words. This wasn't going away quietly. Then he left the room, leaving us in silence again. Amanda broke first. 10 years, she whispered. I can't go to prison. I can't. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. The law wasn't a bargaining chip, and this wasn't one of her social problems I could smooth over with an apology. She kept talking, her voice rising with panic. I'll lose everything. My job, my apartment, my friends. Everyone's going to know. The video's already online, isn't it? People are probably sharing it right now. Her words tumbled out fast and desperate. It wasn't just the fear of prison. It was the collapse of the image she'd built for herself. The polished version of Amanda that existed at parties and on social media couldn't survive mugshots and headlines. I finally answered, my tone flat. You should have thought about that before you took something that didn't belong to you. She slammed her cuffed hands on the table, rattling the chain. Stop acting like you're better than me. You've never made a mistake. Emit her anger with calm. Not this kind. Not one that risks national security. One. The fight drained out of her, leaving only exhaustion. She slumped back in her chair, staring at the ceiling like she could escape through it. For once, she didn't have the upper hand, and she knew it. A knock at the door broke the silence. An officer stepped in and motioned for Amanda. She stood slowly, her bravado gone, and let them lead her out without a word. I stayed seated, my hands folded on the table, feeling the weight of it all pressing down. It wasn't satisfaction or relief. It was the heavy truth that my sister had finally hit a wall she couldn't charm her way through. The law doesn't care about charisma. It doesn't bend for family ties. It just weighs, measures, and delivers. When Martinez returned, he handed me a form. We'll need your signature on the statement confirming chain of custody and initial report. After that, you're free to go. I signed, my pen steady, my handwriting sharp. Every word mattered because every word would become part of the record. He nodded, took the form, and said, You did the right thing, Captain. Harder with family, but you did the right thing. I didn't respond. The right thing doesn't feel good when it involves someone you grew up with. It just feels heavy, like carrying a pack that digs into your shoulders mile after mile. Walking out of the precinct into the night air, I felt that weight settle deeper. Amanda was inside, booked and processed. her fingerprints inked into a file that would follow her for years. The module was secure again, locked away where it belonged. The law had done its part, and whether Amanda liked it or not, her name was now written into it. The next morning started early, though I hadn't slept much. My phone rang before Sunrise Walker again. His tone was clipped, even more than usual. Captain DA is leaning toward pressing full charges. Given the value, it's hard to argue otherwise. You'll be asked for an official stance. Do you want to pursue maximum prosecution? Or is there an alternative you'd support? The words hung there. Pursue maximum prosecution. 10 years behind bars for Amanda. The part of me that had carried years of resentment wanted to say yes. Let her sit in a cell and learn the lesson she'd dodged all her life. But another part, the one that still remembered late-night talks as kids, movie marathons, the way, the small crisis, military training and hard lessons, she used to braid my hair before family events, hesitated. I'll be at the precinct in an hour, I told him. When I walked in, Detective Martinez was waiting with his coffee in hand and that same look of exhaustion. She's been processed. She's in holding. DA's office called me already. They want to push this to trial, unless there's a compelling reason not to. You're the victim here, Captain. Your voice carries weight. He led me back to interview, too. But this time, Amanda wasn't sitting upright, flashing attitude. She was slouched in the chair, hair a mess, makeup smeared, hands trembling slightly even though the cuffs were gone. She looked up at me with red eyes. Olivia, I'm sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I sat across from her, keeping my expression neutral. Ignorance doesn't erase responsibility. I can't go to prison, she whispered. Please, I can't. I'll do anything. Her words sparked an idea. Not forgiveness, not leniency, but something different. Anything. Maybe there was a way to turn this into something more than punishment. Something that would finally crack through her entitlement and force her to see the world beyond herself. Martinez cleared his throat. Captain, the DA wants an answer today. You want to recommend prosecution, or do you have another path in mind? I tapped my fingers against the table, weighing the options. Prison would destroy Amanda, but it wouldn't fix the core problem. She'd come out bitter, blaming everyone else. Probably worse than she was now. Letting her walk free wasn't an option either. Not after everything. She needed consequences that were real, but also a chance to understand the world she'd mocked for so long. I looked at Martinez. What about restitution? He raised an eyebrow. You mean fines? With that valuation, we're talking millions. She doesn't have that kind of money. Not financial restitution, I said. Work service put her into a military restitution program. 6 months minimum full chain of discipline entry. Level assignments, no special treatment. Martinez frowned. That's unusual, those programs. Are rare mostly for first-time offenders with some connection to the military. Even then, they're not exactly popular with judges. I didn't blink, she's a first-time offender. She's family to an officer and she needs discipline more than she needs a cell. If the system wants to avoid a messy trial and a media circus, this is the way. Amanda stared at me, mouth open. You want me to what? Join the army? Not join, I corrected. You'd be placed in a controlled environment, supervised, working under strict discipline for 6 months. You'll scrub floors. You'll take inventory. You'll do whatever they assign. Minimum wage, no special favors. You'll follow orders or you'll face the original charges. She shook her head rapidly. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious, I said flatly. Prison or restitution? Your choice. Martinez leaned back, studying me like he was trying to decide if I was brilliant or insane. I can float it to the DA. They might take it if you're pushing hard for it. Saves resources, avoids a trial, still counts as accountability. Amanda's voice broke. I'm not built for that. I can't. 6 months, I'll die. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on hers. You won't die. You'll learn. You've coasted through life thinking rules don't apply to you. Well, here's the truth. They do. And you're going to find out what that feels like. Her hands clenched in her lap. She glanced at Martinez like he might save her, but he only shrugged. Better than prison, he said. And trust me, prison won't care if you're not built for it. The silence stretched until Amanda finally whispered, "Fine, I'll do it." I nodded once. "Good, because those are your only options." "Well," Martinez stood, scribbling notes on his clipboard. "I'll call the DA. Let them know we're recommending restitution. If they sign off, we'll move her into the program by Monday." He left the room, leaving me alone with Amanda again. She stared at me like I'd betrayed her in the worst possible way. "You really hate me that much?" I shook my head. "This isn't about hate. This is public shame, when family drama hits the news about responsibility. Something you've never had to carry. I'm not letting you dodge it this time." Her lip trembled, but she didn't argue. Maybe for the first time in years, she realized words wouldn't get her out of this. When I left the precinct, the air outside felt sharp, almost too bright. I could hear the city moving around me, cars honking, people shouting, the rhythm of a place that didn't care about my family's problems. Amanda's path had just split in two. Prison or 6 months of a life she'd mocked. She'd chosen the latter, but that didn't mean it would be easy. And for me, the choice was clear. I hadn't saved her from consequences. I'd handed her a mirror she couldn't avoid. Whether she liked it or not, she was about to learn what discipline really looked like. Monday morning came faster than Amanda expected. The paperwork cleared. The DA signed off. And by 7 sharp, she was walking through the gates of Fort Hamilton. Not as a visitor, not as my guest, but as someone assigned to the restitution program. She looked out of place from the moment she stepped inside. Hair too polished, clothes too trendy, makeup still on like she was headed to brunch instead of base orientation. The staff sergeant at the front desk didn't flinch. He handed her a plain set of fatigues and pointed to the locker room. Change. Jewelry off, makeup off, phone in the bin. Amanda froze, staring at the uniform like it was radioactive. "You can't be serious." The sergeant didn't blink. "Not a request." End quote. By the time she came back out, she looked smaller, like the weight of the plain uniform had already cut her down to size. The smugness was gone, replaced by discomfort. She tugged at the sleeves like they were choking her. Her first stop was supply. No dramatic tasks, no top-secret missions, just sweeping, counting, and learning the difference between close enough and exact. Sergeant Lewis, a grizzled veteran with no patience for excuses, gave her a clipboard and pointed to shelves stacked with equipment. "Every piece has a number. You'll log them. Miss one, I'll know." Amanda rolled her eyes, muttering something about busy work. Lewis heard it. "You think this is busy work? That $2 million asset you stole was just one number on a clipboard before you touched it. Numbers matter. Log them." She shut up after that. The hours crawled. By noon, her hands were smudged with pencil marks, her hair sticking to her forehead from the heat of the warehouse. She wasn't used to standing for hours, let alone focusing on details that seemed endless. I watched from a distance, arms crossed, saying nothing. This wasn't my place to guide her. It was hers to survive. Lunch was no reprieve. A paper tray, plain food, no fancy restaurant lighting, no chance to pose for photos. Amanda sat across from another participant in the program, a young man caught shoplifting electronics. He ate silently, head down. She tried to start small talk, but he barely looked up. For once, she wasn't the center of attention. The afternoon brought another lesson, accountability. Each participant was issued a temporary ID badge, color-coded and tracked. Amanda clipped hers on without care until Sergeant Lewis stopped her. "Lose that badge and you'll spend the night cleaning every floor on this base. Guard it with your life." Her scoff died quickly when she saw he wasn't joking. By the end of the day, Amanda was exhausted. Her boots pinched, her back ached, and the uniform she'd mocked in the morning felt like it weighed $50. She sat on the bench outside the barracks, head in her hands, muttering, 6 months of this is going to kill me. I sat down beside her, arms resting on my knees. "No, it won't, but it might fix you." She looked at me, eyes tired, face blotchy without her makeup. "You really think I deserve this?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes, and you'll thank me one day if you make it through." This day was worse. She showed up late to roll call, stumbling in with hair unkempt and boots untied. The instructor didn't yell. He simply handed her a broom and pointed to the latrines. Amanda gagged at the smell, tried to protest, but rules were rules. She spent 2 hours scrubbing floors until her arms shook. By the time she emerged pale and sweaty, the rest of the group had moved redemption test. Military discipline changes everything on. She wasn't allowed to catch up. She was assigned to inventory again, this time under stricter supervision. That night, she lost her ID badge. Not stolen, not misplaced by someone else. She'd left it in the laundry bin with her fatigues. When she realized, she panicked, running around the barracks until she finally confessed. Sergeant Lewis didn't shout. He handed her a mop. You know the rule. Every floor tonight. I walked past hours later and saw her still pushing the mop, eyes glazed, arms heavy. She didn't see me, and I didn't stop. This wasn't about sympathy. It was about consequence. The third day, something shifted. She showed up early, boots tied, hair pulled back properly. She didn't complain when given a stack of forms to file. She didn't roll her eyes when told to recount the same set of equipment she'd already logged. She just did it slowly, grudgingly, but she did it. The program wasn't designed to humiliate. It was designed to grind down the arrogance, to strip away the idea that rules are optional. Amanda, for the first time in her life, was living inside a world where her opinion didn't change the facts, where her excuses didn't erase the consequences. By the end of the first week, she wasn't bragging, wasn't whining, wasn't performing. She was just tired. And in that exhaustion, I saw something I hadn't seen in her before. The beginnings of humility. She sat in the cafeteria one evening, staring at the bland food, and said quietly, I never realized how much work goes into keeping things organized. I thought it just happened. I looked at her across the table. That's the point. It doesn't just happen. People make it happen, and now you're one of them. She didn't argue. She just nodded, chewing slowly, eyes downcast. The second week loomed, promising more of the same. More mops, more clipboards, more hours spent on her feet. Amanda didn't smile, didn't post photos, didn't even reach for her phone anymore. It was locked away, out of reach. She was finally living in a world where nothing revolved around her. And whether she liked it or not, that world was starting to sink in. The third week of the program showed me just how fragile Amanda really was. When her world stopped orbiting around her, the long days of labor and constant supervision were already wearing her down. But what really cracked her was what waited for her outside the gates. Jessica, her girlfriend of almost a year, wasn't impressed with this new version of Amanda. Instead of dinner dates and weekend trips, Jessica now had a partner who came home exhausted, smelling of disinfectant and sweat, too drained to even hold a conversation. Jessica had tolerated the first week, laughed it off, called it Amanda's little military adventure. By week 3, she wasn't laughing anymore. I knew because I overheard part of their conversation outside the barracks one night. Jessica had shown up all attitude and designer heels, glaring at Amanda like she'd betrayed her. I can't believe you let them do this to you, Jessica hissed. 6 months of cleaning and wearing those ugly clothes. You're humiliating yourself and me. No. Amanda looked torn apart, standing there in a wrinkled uniform, hair pinned back without style. I didn't have a choice, Jess. It was this or prison. Jessica crossed her arms. You think that makes it better? Everyone saw that video of you getting arrested. My coworkers sent me links. Do you know how embarrassing that is? I can't keep defending you. Amanda's voice cracked. So what? You're just going to leave? Jessica's heels clicked against the pavement as she turned. Used to be exciting. Now you're a joke? Call me when you're done with this. The look on Amanda's face as Jessica walked away was worse than anything Sergeant Lewis could have thrown at her. For once, Amanda didn't try to yell or argue her way out. She just stood there stunned, like she'd finally realized charm and looks didn't solve every problem. Inside, she tried to act normal, but the cracks showed. She moved slower, ate less, her eyes dull during tasks. She'd always been driven by how others saw her, and now the one person she thought she impressed most had turned her back. The pressure mounted when Sergeant Lewis caught her cutting corners during an inventory, resolution, family revenge, military justice, and hard-earned respect check. She tried to sign off on a pallet without counting each box. He stopped her cold. Grant, he barked. Read me the number on that last case. Amanda glanced at the pallet, guessed, and said, 17. But Lewis yanked the clipboard from her hands, opened the box, and pulled out the manifest. It's 16. You just lied on a government form. Do you know what that means? She froze, cheeks burning. I wasn't lying. You were careless, he snapped. And careless gets people killed. Do it again and you'll be writing reports until your hands bleed. The rest of the group watched in silence. Nobody spoke up for her. In this world, you earned respect by doing the work right, not by being loud or pretty. Amanda's eyes watered, but she held them back, lowering her head and nodding. Later that night, she came to me outside, her voice sharp with frustration. Are you happy now? You've ruined my relationship. I'm scrubbing toilets and strangers scream at me for guessing a number wrong. Is this what you wanted? I met her anger with calm. What I wanted was for you to finally understand that actions have consequences, that respect isn't free and responsibility isn't optional. If that feels like ruin to you, then maybe you needed to be ruined before you could rebuild. She threw her hands up. You think you're perfect, don't you? Always the soldier, always the serious one, always right. I shook my head. I'm not perfect, but I learned the hard way that nobody cares about excuses. You either do it right or you answer for it. That's the life you've been mocking for years. Now you're living it. Her voice cracked again, softer this time. I don't know if I can do this. You can, I said. You just don't want to. There's a difference. The breaking point came at the end of that week. A group assignment required Amanda to work alongside the others to organize an entire section of the supply warehouse. It was tedious, hot, and grueling. With every box needing to be scanned and relocated, Amanda tried to keep pace, but she fell behind quickly. At one point, she dropped a case on her foot, let out a scream, and collapsed onto the floor. Instead of sympathy, the others kept working. Nobody stopped to coddle her. Sergeant Lewis walked over, arms crossed. You done? He asked flatly. She looked up at him, face flushed with pain and humiliation. I can't do this. He crouched slightly, his voice firm but even. Then prison will feel like a vacation. Get up now. Amanda sat there for a moment, shaking before finally dragging herself to her feet. She didn't say another word. She just kept working, slower than the others, but still moving. By the time the day ended, her hands were blistered. Her uniform soaked through. She collapsed onto her bunk, staring at the ceiling like the weight of everything had finally landed. I passed her bed on my way out. She didn't look at me, didn't say a word. But for the first time since the program began, she wasn't pretending. She wasn't cracking jokes, wasn't rolling her eyes, wasn't deflecting. She was just there, stripped bare of the arrogance she'd carried for years. Breaking points aren't always loud. Sometimes they're silent, the kind of silence that follows you into sleep. Amanda had reached hers. Whether she admitted it or not, the world she'd lived in before the one where consequences bounced off her was gone. And the one she was stuck in now wasn't going to bend just because she wanted it to. The warehouse was usually steady, a rhythm of scanning, logging, and moving equipment from one section to another. It wasn't glamorous work, but it kept things in order. That's why the sudden blackout on a Thursday afternoon hit harder than anyone expected. One second, the lights buzzed overhead. The next, everything went dark, followed by the blare of an alarm that echoed through the walls. Amanda froze with a clipboard in her hands, eyes darting to the red emergency lights that flickered on her. The others shifted nervously, the kind of unease that comes when order slips. Sergeant Lewis's voice cut through the noise. Power failure, lockdown procedures. Everyone stay put until we verify asset security. For most of the crew, it was just a drill with bad timing. For Amanda, it was a moment of truth. She had spent weeks memorizing standard operating procedures, rolling her eyes at every detail. Now those details weren't abstract anymore. They were the only thing standing between order and chaos. Lewis barked orders, Grant Section Bravo, secure the racks. Confirm seals. Amanda blinked, startled. May. Yes, you move. She scrambled toward the shelves assigned to her, boots clumsy on the concrete floor. She found the numbered racks, heart racing as she ran her hands along the locks. One was loose, not broken, not tampered with, just loose, the kind of oversight that in normal light might go unnoticed. She hesitated, then remembered the checklist drilled into her head. Step 1, report. Step 2, reseal if possible. She pulled the strap tight, secured it, then called out, "Rack 14B." Loose strap resealed. Lewis glanced over, giving a sharp nod. Logged. Keep moving. The rest of the team worked around her, calling out confirmations, sealing containers, checking doors. Amanda moved faster now, scanning each rack, remembering the phrasing from the manual she once mocked. Rack 15 ampere secure. Rack 15B secure. Her voice grew steadier with each line, louder, more certain. When the lights flickered back on, the alarm cut and the hum of power returned. Everyone let out a collective exhale. Lewis made his round, checking their work, his expression unreadable. Then he stopped at Amanda. "Not bad," he said. Just 2 words. But from him it might as well have been a standing ovation. Amanda didn't grin, didn't brag, she just nodded, wiping sweat from her forehead. For the first time, she hadn't frozen, hadn't cut corners, hadn't waited for someone else to step in. She'd followed the procedure and it had worked. Later at dinner, she sat quietly with her tray, not scrolling through her phone or sighing about the food. One of the other participants, a guy who hadn't said more than 2 words to her since the program began, leaned over and muttered, "You did good today." She blinked, caught off guard. "Thanks." It was small, almost nothing. But Amanda wasn't used to being acknowledged in that world. Praise wasn't handed out for showing up. It was earned when people saw you carry your weight. That night, she pulled me aside outside the barracks. "When the lights went out," she said, her voice low, "I thought I was going to screw it up. But then I heard your voice in my head telling me rules aren't optional. I didn't like it, but it worked." I raised an eyebrow and she let out a small laugh. "Tired but genuine. And maybe you're not as boring as I thought." I didn't smile, but I felt something shift. For years, Amanda had dismissed my career, my discipline, my rules. Tonight, she'd seen a glimpse of why they mattered. The next day, the aftershock of the blackout was still in the air. Reports had to be filed, equipment double cheese-checked. Amanda moved with more purpose, less resistance. She didn't look thrilled about it, but she wasn't dragging her feet either. Sergeant Lewis handed her a stack of forms. "Document the incident from your section. Every detail you remember." Amanda groaned softly. More paperwork. Lewis gave her a look that shut down the complaint instantly. She sat at the desk, chewing her lip as she wrote. She'd never been one for details, but this time she took her time checking each line twice. When she handed it back, Lewis scanned it and grunted. Accurate, acceptable. It wasn't high praise, but it was enough. By the end of the week, Amanda wasn't transformed. But something inside her had cracked open. The woman who once mocked the Army for being nothing but boring logistics had been forced to admit that logistics were the backbone of control. Without them, a simple blackout could spiral into disaster. She didn't say it out loud, but I saw it in her eyes. She understood a little more now. Not everything, not yet, but enough to realize the world Shettis missed was bigger than she thought. When she lay down that night, she didn't toss and turn like she usually did. She closed her eyes and let exhaustion take her without protest. For Amanda, that was its own kind of victory. The blackout report barely cleared the system before the media storm hit. A diner from that Manhattan restaurant had finally uploaded the arrest video, and it spread like wildfire. Within hours, news stations were running the clip on repeat. Amanda in handcuffs. See pulling the device from her purse. Diners whispering and filming like they were extras in a crime drama. I didn't need to search for it. Someone in the office shoved their phone in front of me. The headline read, "Relative of Army officer arrested with classified device at upscale restaurant." Below it, Amanda's face was frozen mid-protest. Her mouth open, eyes wide, mascara smudged. At the base, whispers started. People didn't point at me directly, but I could hear the murmurs. "That's her sister. She's the reason it went public." I ignored them, but Amanda couldn't. She found out during dinner when one of the other program participants shoved their tray aside and said, "So that's you on the news." Amanda's fork froze halfway to her mouth. "What? CNN, Fox, all of them. You're famous now." She pushed her tray away and left without finishing, retreating to the barracks where the Humapones confirmed it. Her name was trending. Her friends were texting, some with pity, others with thinly veiled judgment. Coworkers from her old PR job were blasting screenshots in group chats. Even family wasn't spared. Our parents called me 3 times that night, voices sharp with accusations. "Olivia," my mother said over the phone, "you let them drag her through the mud. How could you let this happen to your own sister?" I clenched my jaw. She put herself there. She walked out with a classified device. "What did you think was going to happen?" Dad cut in. "This could ruin her life. Hen, she almost ruined mine." I snapped. And if that asset had slipped through, it wouldn't just be my life. It would have been careers, missions, maybe lives. "You want me to cover that up because she's family?" The line went quiet. Then my mother's voice softened into something that sounded like disappointment. "You've changed." I didn't answer. They hung up a minute later, leaving the weight of their words behind. Changed? Maybe? Or maybe they were finally seeing me without Amanda's shadow blocking their view. Back in the program, Amanda couldn't hide anymore. People pointed, some smirked, a few offered sympathy, but the damage was done. She hated being seen as weak. Hated that her humiliation was public. For once, her instinct to spin the story didn't work. No witty caption could erase the image of her being led out of a restaurant in cuffs. One afternoon, she confronted me in the hallway. "You couldn't protect me from this. You're a captain, Olivia. You couldn't make a call and keep my face off the news." I looked her dead in the eye. "That's not how it works. And even if I could, I wouldn't. Actions have consequences. You wanted attention your whole life. Now you have it." Her face twisted equal parts anger and shame. She stormed off. But later that night, I found her sitting alone on the steps outside the barracks, head in her hands. "I can't go anywhere without people staring," she muttered. "I'm a joke. Even Jessica won't answer my calls." "Good," I said flatly. "Maybe now you'll stop worrying about who's looking at you and start worrying about what you're actually doing." She glared up at me. "You don't understand what it's like to be humiliated like this." I crossed my arms. "I've been chewed out by generals in front of entire units. I've been blamed for mistakes that weren't mine and had to fix them anyway. You think humiliation is unique to you? The difference is, when it happens to me, I take responsibility instead of crying about my reputation." Amanda didn't reply. She just stared out at the dark lot, silent for once. The fallout spread further than her personal shame. Extended family started calling, asking questions, offering backhanded comments. We saw the news. Is it true? Poor Amanda. She didn't know better. Nobody asked how it felt for me, how it affected my career, or what it meant to be the one who had to report her. Their sympathy was all for her. Inside the program, though, something shifted. The participants who'd mocked her quieted down after the media storm. Maybe they realized she wasn't untouchable. Or maybe they saw her differently now, someone broken down, struggling like the rest of them. One evening in the cafeteria, the same young man who'd ignored her weeks earlier slid his tray across from hers. He didn't say much, just tough break. "At least you owned it today." Amanda looked stunned, then managed a small nod. For her, that scrap of respect meant more than any Instagram like ever had. The staff noticed too. Lewis didn't praise her, but he also didn't tear into her as harshly. Instead, he assigned her to partner tasks, forcing her to rely on others. She worked slower, quieter, but she worked. And when someone asked her for help, she actually gave it. No eye rolls, no sarcasm. Public shame had done what lectures and scolding couldn't. It stripped away the illusion. Amanda wasn't the glamorous sister anymore, the golden child, the one with all the charm. She was just another person in uniform, eating bland food, scrubbing floors, and trying to make it through the day without messing up. Late one night, after lights out, she whispered across the dark barracks, her voice barely audible. "Olivia, were you ever ashamed of me before all this?" I stared at the ceiling, letting the silence stretch. Finally, I answered quietly. "Number." I was disappointed. "There's a difference." She didn't respond, but I could hear her breathing steady, slower, calmer. For Amanda, maybe disappointment was worse than shame. The next morning, she showed up to roll call early, uniform neat, boots tied tight. She didn't smile, didn't crack a joke, didn't look around for approval. She just stood there ready, and for the first time, I thought maybe the shame had finally burned through enough layers to reach something real underneath. By the fourth month of Amanda's restitution program, routine had finally become normal for her. She still hated the bland meals and the endless repetition of counting, cleaning, and logging. But she did it without rolling her eyes or muttering under her breath. She'd stopped looking for shortcuts and had started keeping her head down, moving through each day like someone who knew the price of failure. That's why the incident in late July hit so hard. A supply shipment arrived from a defense contractor in Virginia, destined for a Heil client review with representatives from the Department of Defense. The shipment was large, complex, and time-sensitive. Everything had to be logged, confirmed, and secured before the oversight team arrived the next morning. Normally, this kind of assignment wouldn't involve someone like Amanda. But because manpower was thin that day, Sergeant Lewis assigned her and 2 others to assist. "No mistakes," he barked. "If you don't know something, ask. Every serial number, every seal, every form, triple-check it." Amanda swallowed hard and nodded. She had no room to argue. The first few hours were smooth. Pallets were unloaded, crates stacked, barcodes scanned. Amanda worked quietly, writing down numbers, double-checking with the manifest. But just afternoon, a problem surfaced. One of the crates was labeled incorrectly. The paperwork listed it as communications equipment, but the barcode pulled up guidance parts. A small discrepancy, but in the military world, small discrepancies were the seeds of disasters. The corporal in charge, already sweating under pressure, cursed. "This can't be right. If the DoD sees this tomorrow, we're screwed." Amanda froze, staring at the forms in her hand. A month earlier, she might have shrugged it off, assumed someone else would fix it, but the blackout incident had changed her. She knew what unchecked errors could mean. She took a breath and spoke up. "We need to isolate the crate, pull the serial, and match it against the contractor's shipping log, then flag it in the discrepancy report before tomorrow." The corporal looked at her surprised. "And you know how to do that?" "I've been doing nothing but SOP drills for weeks," she said. Section 4B, page 12. If the paperwork doesn't match the asset, you don't move it forward until it's reconciled. For a moment, the room was silent. Then Lewis, who had been standing in the corner listening, gave a curt nod. "She's right, Grant. Show them." Amanda moved to the crate, scanning it again, pulling the physical serial from the side and writing it down. She cross-referenced it with the master log, then filled out the discrepancy form in clean, deliberate handwriting. She handed it to the corporal. "Now the contractor gets flagged and the oversight team sees we caught it before they did. It shows we're paying attention, not hiding mistakes." The corporal blinked, then actually cracked a smile. "Damn, not bad." Lewis took the form, glanced at it, then looked at Amanda. "You finally learned something." Amanda didn't beam or gloat. She just nodded. A small flicker of pride visible in her eyes. For once, the recognition wasn't about charm or looks, it was about competence. The next morning, when the oversight team arrived, the discrepancy report was presented before they even asked. The representatives nodded, made notes, and moved on. The shipment cleared with minimal delay, and the contractor got slapped with a fine. More importantly, the unit's reputation stayed intact. Afterward, Lewis called Amanda into his office. She stood stiffly, hands behind her back, waiting for the reprimand she always expected. Instead, he said, "You handled yourself yesterday. You didn't panic. You followed procedure. You caught a mistake others missed. That's how you keep this machine running." Amanda blinked. "Thank you, Sergeant." "Don't thank me. Just keep doing it. Discipline doesn't stop when someone's watching. It's what you do when nobody island." She nodded again, more firmly this time. That evening, she found me near the barracks. "Olivia," she said quietly. "For the first time since this started, I felt like I actually did something that mattered. Not just cleaning up or logging boxes, something real." I studied her, seeing the exhaustion, but also the spark that hadn't been there before. "That's because you stopped looking for shortcuts. You respected the process. That's what makes it matter." She exhaled almost like relief. "All those years, I thought you were just hiding behind rules. I thought you lived a boring life while I was out there having fun. But the truth is, I didn't understand. I didn't respect you. Not until now. Now." Her voice cracked on the last words, but she didn't cry. She held herself steady, like she was finally learning how to stand on her own. The redemption test hadn't been planned. It wasn't staged for her benefit. It came naturally in the form of a shipping error that could have spiraled. And in that moment, Amanda had stepped up. Not perfectly, not heroically, but competently. And in this world, competence was everything. The program wasn't over. She still had weeks left. Still had plenty of work to grind through. But for the first time, I didn't see her as a liability. I saw her as someone who might actually walk out of this program different than she walked in. And maybe, just maybe, she saw herself that way too. By the time Amanda's 6 months were nearly complete, the base no longer looked like a prison to her. It wasn't comfortable. She still hated the food, the schedules, and the constant supervision. But she'd adapted. She woke up on time, kept her uniform neat, and even corrected others when they slipped on procedures. For someone who once treated rules as a joke, it was a transformation I wouldn't have believed if I hadn't watched it happen day by day. The final weeks tested her own last time. She was assigned to assist in preparing for an inspection, the kind that could make or break on its reputation. Every crate had to be spotless, every form perfect, every seal double-checked. Amanda didn't flinch. She worked long hours without complaint, cleaning until her knuckles were raw, reviewing logs twice over before signing her name. When the inspectors arrived, they found nothing to criticize. Afterward, Sergeant Lewis called the group together. His speech was short, as always. Most of you came in here thinking this was punishment. For some, it was. For others, it was a chance to learn. What you take from it is up to you. Discipline isn't about fear. It's about respect for the work, for the people around you, for yourself. Don't forget that when you leave. Amanda stood straighter than I'd ever seen her, chin high, but not arrogant. She didn't need to prove herself with words. Her work had spoken loud enough. When she was officially released from the program, I drove her home. The ride was quiet at first. She stared out the window, watching the city roll past, her hands folded in her lap. Finally, she said, "I thought I'd hate you forever for putting me through this, but now I think you saved me." I kept my eyes on the road. "Didn't save you. You saved yourself. I just gave you the choice." She nodded slowly, absorbing that. "You were right. I never respected you. I never respected what you did. I thought I was better because I was living some glamorous life. But when it mattered, I couldn't even handle a clipboard without screwing it up. I needed this. I just didn't know it." Her voice cracked, but she didn't break down. She was stronger now, steadier. When we pulled up outside her apartment, she didn't rush out. She sat there for a moment, then turned to me. "I owe you not just for keeping me out of prison, but for forcing me to see who I really was. I don't know if I can ever pay that back." I met her eyes. "Don't pay me back. Just don't go back to who you were." She smiled faintly. The first genuine smile I'd seen from her in months. Deal. Word about her restitution spread through the family. Of course our parents called. Their tone softer now, less accusatory. They still didn't understand why I'd let it go so far. But they couldn't deny the change in Amanda. She was calmer, more responsible, less eager to dominate every conversation. At family dinners, she listened instead of interrupting. She even asked me questions about my work. Not the dismissive kind, but real loans. The public story faded too. The headlines moved on. The video disappeared under newer scandals. Amanda still winced when she thought about it, but instead of hiding from it, she treated it as a reminder. "That was my rock bottom," she said once. "I don't ever want to go back there." The navigation module that started it all was long gone. Logged back into secure storage, eventually integrated into a system that would never know the drama it had caused. To the Army, it was just another asset. To me, it was the $2 million line Amanda finally couldn't cross without consequences. 6 months of restitution hadn't erased years of bad habits, but it had forced her to confront them. She learned that charm doesn't fix a broken system. Shortcuts don't erase accountability, and family ties don't outweigh federal law. For me, it was a reminder, too. It reminded me why discipline matters, why rules aren't just paperwork, why accountability protects more than property. It protects trust. My sister had been blind to that her whole life. Now she finally saw it. On her last night before officially returning to her normal life, she stopped by my apartment. She didn't barge in like she used to. She knocked. When I opened the door, she held up a bag. Dinner, my treat. Inside, we sat at the table eating takeout. The silence between us easier than it had ever been. Halfway through, she said, "You know, used to think you were boring, but now boring doesn't sound so bad. Boring sounds like stable, like safe, like someone who actually knows what they're doing." I smirked. "Careful, you're starting to sound responsible." She laughed. Genuine and unguarded. "Don't push it." When she left that night, she hugged me. Not the quick, distracted kind she used to give, but a tight, lingering hug. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." I stood there after she walked away, the city buzzing around me, and realized something. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was restitution. Not just for the army, but for our family. Amanda had borrowed more than a device that night. She'd borrowed years of my patience, my trust, my forgiveness, and for once, she was finally giving something back. Looking back, I can't pretend any of it was easy. Turning in my own sister felt like tearing open a wound that would never fully close. But that's the reality of service. Loyalty to duty has to come before loyalty to blood or the entire system crumbles. Amanda thought she could borrow her way through life, that everything she touched would be forgiven because she was family, because she was charming, because she could smile her way past the truth. That illusion ended the night she walked out of my apartment with a $2 million asset. The military didn't bend for her, and neither did I. And yet, in the wreckage of that arrest, something unexpected happened. She learned slowly, painfully, angrily, but she learned. She found out that rules aren't just shackles. They're the framework that keeps chaos from swallowing everything. She found out that responsibility is heavier than any piece of jewelry she ever wore. And maybe most importantly, she found out that respect isn't handed out, it's earned. For me, the lesson was just assharp. Family ties don't disappear under pressure, but they don't excuse failure either. I didn't want revenge against Amanda. I wanted her to face reality. The restitution program gave her that chance. And for the first time in years, I saw her step up instead of step away. Today, when she knocks on my door instead of barging in, when she listens instead of dismissing, when she thanks me instead of assuming, it reminds me that the hardest choices aren't about punishment. They're about giving someone the one thing they never wanted but always needed: accountability. And sometimes accountability is the only real act of love left too.